I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of our shooting program, and welcome to today's show. We got a little break in the weather this morning. It was about 12 degrees here, and of course there's still some ice, a little snow left here on the range, but now it's in the 40s, and I tell you what, after the past several days of really cold weather here in Louisiana, certainly cold for us. Anytime it gets below 10 degrees, it's certainly cold here. It feels like a breath of spring. Well, we're so glad to have you. We have a great show for you, and we have some things I think that are going to entertain you as well as inform you, certainly. The judge has some great comments also. We plan to go back and pick up a couple of things that we started or touched on in the past couple of shows, so I think you're going to find it interesting. Certainly hope so. Well, let's open today's show with a gun that was described, I believe, I've read by the German military as simply inhuman. And of course they were talking about the 12-gauge shotgun in the trenches in World War I. So let's, we have some water bottles out here that have volunteered to be on our opening today, and we have some buckshot. I think there's probably still some ice there, so let's do that now. Let's get another shooting show underway. Well, don't know about inhuman, but I'll tell you what, darn sure effective. Now, friends, we're going to look at something today that is certainly important to me, and I think those of you who go out and actually shoot your guns and become familiar with them, I think it'll be important to you too. You know, we've talked before about grip angle, and I was talking about what a natural and, for me, the most practical and comfortable grip angle and the most shootable grip angle could be, and that, of course, is the grip angle on the 1911. Now, there are some other guns out there, semi-automatics, that have a different grip, but the 1911 is typically the easiest to shoot, and all you have to do is look at all the shooting games, and the winners are all 1911s, or in the case in the really serious competitions they are, and the other guns that might come in occasionally and win a place would be something like the CZ75, which again has a very similar grip angle to the 1911. It just points naturally. You know, it's just like pointing your finger. Well, for all the development work in the Smith & Wesson Sigma, by the way, which has been a real fine gun for us, this gun we shot a good bit, and it has really been reliable. It's really been a nice semi-automatic. All the computer work that Smith & Wesson did, guess what angle they came up with? Well, of course, the angle of the 1911, the one that John Browning held his hand up and he said, nail it, yeah, that's about right, because it is so shootable. Well, in revolvers, the situation is not quite as simple due to the placing of the mainspring, and a lot of us like Ruger revolvers. I'm certainly one of them, and Rugers have a slightly steeper, and I say steeper back this way, grip angle. It's not as near what I would feel like is a proper grip. Now that's my opinion, and some of the European target pistols especially have to me it's a ridiculous grip angle. Maybe it's to help in feeding a 22 or whatever, making the 22 bullet go in the chamber better, I don't know. But for me personally, and I know for a lot of you out there certainly that shoot 1911s and would prefer a more direct grip angle, now here's what happens. Under rapid shooting, we tend to revert to what is natural, like so, like a punch, just like so, out straight, like pointing our finger. Well, a lot of the revolvers, in particular the Ruger revolvers, are canted over somewhat, so instead of pointing your first finger, it's more like pointing your thumb. And what happens under stress or at night, people bring the gun out and they have to, if they're trying to defend themselves, or if you're a police officer in a firefight, well, typically in the past, a lot of police officers have tended to shoot high, because what happens if you have a steep grip angle, and this is my theory, and I've talked to a number of other people around the industry about it, most of them agree with me. I say most of them. What will happen, at least for me, you point the gun out naturally. Well, look where the barrel is. It's pointing up in the sky. See, you have to consciously tilt your hand over like so to bring your sights in line. Whereas on the Smith & Wesson guns, typically the grip angle for me is better. It's a more natural pointing, and you still have to cant your hand a little bit, but not as much, say, as on the Ruger. Well, let's see a practical application of that. And we featured a Packmare grip on the program here recently, a decelerator, which is a very fine grip. And there are a lot of real good custom grips out there. Well, we've been working with this little Ruger GP 101, GP100 on the program, one of our test guns, and I ran into a grip that I had here on the farm for Super Red Hawk. Well, it will interchange. It fits the GP100 just fine. So I made a comparison, and I think you'll find it interesting. With this whole grip on the Ruger, they have corrected one of the problems that I see, at least for me shooting the gun well, by changing that angle down. And as you can see from the picture, it makes a difference. It reshapes your grip surface. Now, of course, the Rugers have a spur rather than a large frame type situation, such as we're used to on Smith & Wesson. The Rugers have a spur type arrangement which runs down the center of the grip, but the good folks at Hogue have sort of gotten around that by, again, angling the grip down, and it makes the gun point much more naturally for me. Well, let's take a look again in practical application here, see what it looks like. Friends, this is a stock Ruger grip here on this GP100. Now then, my natural arrangement here would be to try and point my first finger. Well, you'll see the Ruger's still far in the air. Now you have to do it more like pointing your thumb, but still it's a little high. So what happens if we were shooting really in a hurry, or we used to shooting in 1911 and come back to this revolver? Well, what would we do? We would have a tendency to shoot high. Well, that's with, again for me, with the stock grip. Well, let's change the grip and see what happens. As we've installed our Hogue grip, and it's very simple. It just have a little place that goes in the a little latch that goes in the bottom. You have one screw. It's very secure. Has a real nice, this is a sort of a softer compound. I'm not really sure which one it is, but I'm sure they would make this available. I'm sure it's a standard grip situation. Anyway, as you can see, what it does, it puts a little more material here. Now here's the stock Ruger grip, and it's thinner here. So the Ruger grip, your top of your hand would be a little further forward. And notice now, see the Ruger grip extends sort of like this. It has an angle like a little steeper here. Well, the Hogue grip enables you to have a more straight down grip. It changes the feel of the gun. It changes your relationship to sighting the gun. And you say, well, why is this important? Well, I'll tell you what, friends, you go out and shoot your gun, you'll find out just, in fact, if you try several different types, just how important it is. It becomes very similar now to the Smith & Wesson grip arrangement, which again very close. So I like that a lot. The Smiths are easier for me to shoot than the Rugers are typically. I like the Ruger mechanisms. They're very strong and well made. A little bit clunky, but hey, they work really well. I'm certainly a fan of their guns. So what it does, it puts your sight on your barrel, puts the barrel, see where my finger is, down pointed straight by it, by the trigger guard. It puts it more in line, see, with what we're shooting. So then it is just easier to hit your target. You know, friends, I've said on a number of occasions that I really do like the GP100 guns. They really are a nice gun. And what you need to do is you need to go down to your gun dealer and try several different grips and try how they feel, because, you know, think about it, your grip is your connection to the gun, your connection to the target, to anything you want to do with the gun. Your hand has to be comfortable on the grip. The grip itself can make, as we saw just on a material difference, like on the decelerator with the Pacmauer grips, the standard material versus the softer material, made a tremendous amount of difference on how the gun feels to shoot. And as I've said, changing the angle for me, the Smith & Wessons point more accurately for me, easier for me than do the Rugers. But the Rugers are very fine guns, so this will be a shooting aid for some of you. It'll help you understand just a little better on how your gun works and how it functions. And you know, that's what it's all about, is learning to properly shoot your gun and enjoy doing it. You know, friends, all of us as shooting enthusiasts should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. 3 big issues monthly with literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains. Give them a call, 1-800-345-6923, a very inexpensive subscription price. Again, 1-800-345-6923. Subscribe today. Now friends, we want to look at something that may be useful for some of us today. You know what a fan I am of the 1911, and there are reasons for it. I just think it's the best overall semi-automatic pistol design that's ever been. There's some other real fine guns out there, but the 1911, in my humble opinion, is still the best design. It's what all the other guns compare themselves to as far as the way they function and the way they work. And believe me, the 1911s are made in probably more incantations than about any other gun. Probably the most highly customized semi-automatic, or maybe even handgun going for that matter. Okay, we have something of interest that, our good friend Chip McCormick makes a real fine magazine. He, as far as I know, sort of pioneered the 8-round magazine for 1911s. And he's come with a new product, a 10-round 45 ACP magazine. Now, instead of fitting flush with the base of your gun here, what it does, it goes in, it has a nice little plastic piece there to sort of, aesthetically it's more pleasing, I guess. It's just a little bit bigger. It gives you a little something there at the base of the gun. Also, it makes an excellent bumper pad. This is going to be an option for those of you who feel like you need more ammunition. Tell you where it really comes in handy. If you compete in IPSC type shooting, whereas your standard 1911, you just don't have enough rounds in some of the stages, so this will really be a help. A 10-round magazine with one in the barrel will give you a total of 11 possible shells in your gun there, and that will make up some of the differences between some of the para ordnance guns hold 13, 14, some of the Caspian and STI guns hold as many as 18 or 19 cartridges. And in the real world, I just really don't think capacity is an issue. I think that being able to hit your target. But in some of the shooting games, those of you with a regular 1911 may feel somewhat of a loss there. And it is. It's when you have to make more magazine changes. Someone has 18, 19, 20 rounds in the gun. Well, they will be able to get through a stage without a magazine change where you may have to change once or twice with a 7-round magazine gun. So that's something that Chip McCormick's products, everything we've seen from his shop has been very well made, very nicely done. And this looks to be a good magazine. It holds, like I said, 10. And you can see in comparison there to the standard length magazine, it is somewhat different. Well, let's try it. We would expect about anything to work in our gun sight custom gun. And of course, this gun will feed just about any type of bullet profile. But let's don't do that. We figure it'll work in the gun sight gun. Let's take a 100% stock Springfield Armory, and honestly, let's try it and see if it works. Friends, see, it does protrude from the bottom of the gun somewhat, and we'll insert our standard magazine just for reference purposes here. See, this is a standard situation, and here's your 10-round magazine. And like I say, heck, it doesn't even look bad, It would, I could certainly see where, like I said earlier, in competition, and some of the police officers out there might want to carry these as backups. Maybe you didn't want the extension there in your holster if you're carrying a 1911. We've already chambered one, so let's go ahead and let's just see how it works. And honestly, I don't know. We're about to try this. Well, we just got this just a few days ago, and let's see, in fact, how it does work with our 100% stock Springfield Armory. All right, here we go. And it's locked back. That's 11 shots. And heck, our group's not that bad. Let's go up and take a look at our group there. Well, heck, out here at about 10 yards for fairly rapid fire, 11 shots. Not so bad, actually. And you saw it. Heck, it worked just fine in this particular gun here. I would go on and try several different profiles to be sure it would work in my particular 1911 and just try it. That's one thing. I never take a magazine that I have not tried into a match, or certainly I wouldn't carry any component on the gun. You've got to take it out and try it, because any component may cause a change in the way the gun works. So this is something we thought we'd show you from Chip McCormick. This is the 10-round 45 ACP magazine.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
If you are a boater or a birder, if you ever carry a camera, Bi-Tote is for you. It is the most comfortable binocular and camera carrier on the market today. And its all-elastic quick change feature makes it possible to switch from one piece of equipment to another without missing a beat. If you think that carrying binoculars or cameras is a pain in the neck, try Bi-Tote. For the first time, your equipment will feel almost weightless, and you'll be free of that annoying swinging and bouncing which is hard on your body as well as the equipment, especially when you're negotiating rough terrain or on a pitching boat. One hand for you, one hand for the boat, and Bi-Tote for your binoculars or camera. They'll be ready for you instantly, held firmly in position. They're always there, not buried in a locker or other out-of-the-way place. And the Bi-Tote is totally adjustable for a custom fit. All necessary adapters and complete instructions are included with your Bi-Tote. How did you ever get along without it?
You know, all revolvers have a gap, or at least all of them that we commonly come into use with or commonly come into contact with, have a gap between the cylinder and the barrel. Right here. Now, of course, that gap is necessary because the cylinder has to be free to turn. So you've got anywhere from 3 or 4 to up to 9 or 10 thousandths of an inch gap between the front of the cylinder there and the barrel, the forcing cone on the barrel. Now then, we don't think too much about that, but again, we have a lot of people that are new to shooting that watch our program, and there may be some things here that we just haven't thought about. You never, ever want to get your hand around that gap between the cylinder and the barrel for this reason. You know, that gunpowder creates a tremendous amount of pressure. And in the cartridge itself, you may be looking at anywhere from 30 to 40,000 pounds of, per square inch of pressure. And that's on one of the Magnum calibers, like a 357 or a 44. But you think about it, 30,000 to 40,000 pounds per square inch is a tremendous amount of pressure. That's a little bitty gap there. And the gap is so small as to contain most of the pressure, and certainly it pushes the bullet out at a fast pace out the end of that barrel. But we have a little something we'll show you here, and let me show you how this works. I'm going to put a glove on, and we don't recommend you doing this at home because, like I said, I've got safety glasses, of course, and a glove, and we have a piece of a paper plate that someone was using down here on the range for targets, and I'm going to put this paper plate up here beside the cylinder barrel gap. And let's just take a watch the paper when I shoot it, and put it up here kind of close. Let's just watch this piece of paper plate, which is normally a fairly durable piece of paper. Take a look and see what happens when I put it up by the gap. Whoa! Guess what? Now you see that? It cut right through it. And let me tell you what, if that had been your finger right along that gap there, if that had been your finger, I have heard of someone shooting a Magnum gun, had the finger right up against that gap, and it just sliced it off, just like it becomes literally a pressure knife. Now out here, this far away, all you'd get would be a spray, because you do get a flash there of powder granules and things there from the cartridge burning, the powder burnage inside the gun there. Out here it wouldn't necessarily hurt you, but boy, up here close, well, that pressure is concentrated. So this is a rule that we think is very important. Never, ever, ever on a revolver put your fingers or anything around that gap between that cylinder and that barrel. This is an important safety tip for those of you who don't know how guns work. And that's really important. That could save yourself a painful trip to the hospital there and keep all your fingers intact. So that's, tell you what, that's took it right out of there.
You know, friends, it's rare in any field of manufacture that one particular company has a clear-cut advantage over the others. Well, in this case, it's Corbin Ammunition, Corbin Bullet Company, because they make the best handgun, long gun, and even some specialty caliber ammunition that's been real hard to get in the past. If you really want your handgun or rifle to perform at their absolute best, you need to find some Corbin ammunition. For information on where you can get Corbin, information on their product line, call them. Corbin Bullet Company, 1-800-626-7266. Again, give them a call. It's a free call, 1-800-626-7266. Trust me on this one. Corbin is the best there is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you're enjoying our program. We're over at the judge's house this evening, in fact, getting ready for the coming week and what's going to have to be done. Sir, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine, Johnny. I thawed out.
Hey, it's been pretty tough here, hasn't it?
We've had cold weather here, cold for us, nothing compared to what the rest of the country's had.
Well, anytime it gets below 10 degrees here, I think I said that earlier at the opening, anytime it's below 10 here, it's cold.
Well, anytime it's below 10, it's cold anywhere, really, but when you talk about 50 below zero and up in
No, there's no competition in it.
some parts of the north central part of the country, and even out in Idaho, where my daughter is, it's been down around zero, not in the day, but at night.
Mm-hmm. Well, sir, we have some excitement going on as far as politically speaking, don't we?
Well, pretty exciting, Johnny. The Louisiana presidential primary is tomorrow. We have 3 candidates in it. We have Graham from Texas, and they're conducting an active campaign. I've been called 2 or 3 times by their telephone group. And Buchanan, I've been called by their telephone group also. And Alan Keyes. Have not been called by a telephone group for Alan Keyes, but he did appear at our state convention, and I'm sure we'll have a slate of delegates. But that thing will be over tomorrow, so by the time you see this tape, you'll have some idea about who's in front. Our governor, our Republican governor, a new Republican governor, has just endorsed Buchanan, and of course, as you know, Gun Owners of America endorsed Buchanan also. I'm interested in talking to you a little bit about Gun Owners of America. I wanted to talk to you about a political victory fund tonight, but I had a talk with the executive director of Gun Owners of America today, and rather than putting money into a political victory fund, you know, I suggested to you last week that if you just put $20, if 10% of our viewing audience would send $20 apiece to Gun Owners of America, they would have $60 million, and that would influence more than 100 political campaigns. Now, that's very important. But they tell me that they can do just as well if, instead of putting it into a political victory fund, if you'll send a membership in for $20, they will do just as well, because their cost right now per member, the administrative overhead, is about half of that
Fee of membership
about half of that membership fee, their direct costs. But if they were to double or triple or quintuple their membership, that would become proportionately much less, and they would have money left over for advertising, for what they call educational items, and that's what they did with Steve Stockman last year. They put a lot of money into that campaign, but it was mostly in connection with educating people about the issues in the campaign, and that becomes extremely important. because most people don't realize what their elected representatives are actually doing. And the press only reports a little bit of it, and sometimes in the most favorable possible light to that incumbent. And consequently, the public really doesn't know what's happening. And in that connection, there's a Senate bill, 1296, I think it is, 1200 and something, that it's a campaign finance reform bill. And one of the provisions in it is a serious encroachment on the First Amendment, freedom of speech, because they have a limitation on what any group of individuals can do in connection with political campaigning. I'm vehemently opposed to that. It would wipe out NRA, it would wipe out GOA's political funds. We need those organizations to help us keep track of our representatives and see what they're doing and tabulate their votes and distribute them to us, because most of the time we don't even see what those individual votes are unless you're a C-SPAN addict like I am, much to my wife's consternation.
Well, the problem is a lot of us don't have C-SPAN, and two, who's going to sit down? Who would have the time? Well, really, this is another backdoor deal, so these folks in Washington can start getting away with more stuff, right?
It's a backdoor deal to let the major media in the country influence elections even more, relatively much more than they do now. Talk radio, of course, has helped a lot. Talk television has helped a lot, and this little segment of our program is in essence part of talk television, except we don't have a call-in facility because we don't record our programs live, so that we can't get call-ins.
Maybe we ought to look at that. You know, maybe we should at some
Well,
point.
it would be nice, but I don't know how we do it, Johnny.
Well, let's think about it.
It's a satellite program. If it weren't a satellite program, they were going out direct, yes, you could do it.
Well, we're taking this a couple of days before it's going to be broadcast, and heck, there may be a way. I don't know. That's something we can consider.
But you see, a person couldn't call in and talk to us and hear what we are saying.
Well, not under the present
Right.
situation, but maybe later on, something for us to think about.
Well, now let me tell you what some of the harsh political realities are. In Oregon, for example, last week, we had a liberal Democrat beat a more or less moderate Republican by 48% to 47%. Now, where's that other 5%? That other 5% were splinter candidates who were more conservative than the moderately conservative Republican was. So now we get a liberal Democrat simply because some hard-headed people insist on voting for a splinter candidate, and it's really a protest vote. It cost the Republicans a seat in the Senate. It cost you as gun owners a lot.
Have another enemy.
Because you've got another enemy. You've got a gun control freak in the Senate, when you could have had somebody that was more or less favorable to us. Now, I'm a firm believer that people ought to vote for principle. I'm a firm believer that the Republican Party needs to be a party of principle. But that works within the party. You get active in the party. You influence the direction that it's going within the party. And then once a candidate is chosen, I don't say vote Republican all the time. I don't say vote Democrat all the time. I say vote for the person. Vote for the man. But in the Oregon situation, you had a clear line of demarcation, and those splinter candidates knew that they weren't going to win, and the electorate, the people that voted for them, knew they weren't going to win too. And I say the people who voted for Ross Perot a little over 2 years ago knew that Ross Perot wasn't going to win the presidency either, but they ended up getting William Jefferson Clinton elected president with 43% of the national vote. 43%, exactly the same percentage that Jimmy Carter got, exactly the same percentage that Mondale got, exactly the same percentage that who ran against Reagan in his middle years, as far as middle term.
the guy from, yeah, we know who we're talking about, the Tank Man.
Oh, yes, Dukakis. Dukakis got 43% of the vote. That's a hardcore Democrat vote. And if we deprive a better candidate of the vote that he would ordinarily get, we will end up electing a liberal Democrat or a liberal somebody who is really opposed to us. They're opposed to our gun rights, they're opposed to our conservative agenda, and again, in the language that Sarah Brady herself used, we will never achieve our dream of a socialist America until we totally disarm all those who would never agree. And the gun owners of America are people who would never agree.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station. You know, Carrie, I think it's as important for you ladies to know how to use these firearms as it is for us men. But you know, there's something else. We can have firearms for defense of our homes and certainly for sport, but we also need information.
Yes, I agree. I think the New American Magazine is the best source of information available in this country.
Well, I would certainly agree. The New American Magazine is the truth and nothing but the truth. And friends, if you would like to know what is really going on in this country and around the world, if you want, in fact, the truth, well, you need to get the New American Magazine. So here's how to do it. You can get the New American by calling 1-800-727-TRUE-TRUE. And those numbers, of course, are 1-800-727-8783. The New American, $22 for a 6-month subscription. It comes twice a month. Now, friends, with your new Shootin' Show subscription, they will also send you a free copy of what the United Nations is bringing to all of us. So this is very important. Subscribe today. You know, friends, in times like these, which indeed are strange times, we certainly need our firearms, but we also need the information about what's really going on. Order today.
Let's look at Gun Owners of America. That is a most non-compromising gun rights organization there is, more so than the NRA. Now, understand, I don't dislike the NRA. I think the NRA is great, and they've been a wonderful influence. But Gun Owners of America have also been a big influence. Without Gun Owners of America, Steve Stockman down in South Texas said he couldn't have been elected. Well, that's fine. And Stockman is as ideal a representative from gun owner standpoint that you could hope to have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We need more people like that. If you would just join Gun Owners of America, it's a $20 annual membership fee. I guess I would have put in a life membership, but $500 for a life membership for a person my age is kind of absurd. I could never recoup it unless I live to be 100, which I won't.
Well, you could. You're pretty feisty.
Well, I'm a little feisty, but as I look back on the way I was 30 years ago, I would say that I've mellowed a good bit. And if that mellowing continues at that rate for the next 30 years, I won't be anything like as effective a voice.
Well, I know
we're talking about.
I know what you're saying, and we'll give the address and their phone number in just a minute for GOA, because they are a very fine group. What you're saying is, don't throw your vote away.
I'm saying, for heaven's sakes, don't throw your vote away. If you want to get something like that, do it in your party primary. do it in your party caucus. That is what we could do. For example, we've got only 3 candidates on our ballot this time. There's Buchanan, and he's got a slate of candidates. There's Graham. Graham has a slate of candidates, and I presume that Alan Keyes has a slate of candidates. Now, because they had a slate of candidates, because I didn't want to fight their telephone banks, I certified myself as a delegate to the National Convention as an undecided vote. Now, presumably that means I'll pick up any of the Dole votes. I would pick up any of the Alexander votes, any of the whoever votes. Maybe even some of the Forbes vote.
Well, Forbes is making the news media squirm, isn't he?
Forbes is giving everybody hell because of the size of his bank account. But you can't ask Forbes a question and get an answer that doesn't go right back to his flat tax. He is stuck on the idea of a flat tax. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it's a bad idea the way he's got it, because he would tax only people who have an income, an earned income, what the IRS calls an earned income, that is from wages and salaries. He wouldn't tax dividends. He wouldn't tax pension plans. He wouldn't tax Social Security. He would have no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax. Now, let's understand this. Inheritance taxes are good and bad. The inheritance taxes were originally enacted with the idea of trying to level some of the huge fortunes in this country. If any of you have ever read the book The Great Moguls, or perhaps Hetty Green, Witch of Wall Street, or books like that, you will see the power that a few people wielded at that time. And Mr. Forbes is wielding that kind of power. And believe me, he's going to be a beneficiary of his idea of a flat tax, a tremendous beneficiary of it. He'll be able to pass on his vast estate to his children with no inheritance taxes. Now, I think inheritance taxes have to be reasonable. They should not be confiscatory. They're there for the idea of leveling the huge fortunes and the inordinate quantity of influence that they can exert over the rest of the country. And Mr. Forbes is showing what that can be right now. He is outspending all of the other candidates. He's subject to no spending restrictions. I don't think he should be. He shouldn't be subject to spending restrictions. He's spending his own money, and you ought to be able to spend your own money for whatever you want to. But the public needs to understand that. You as gun owners need to understand it. And you're going to have to mobilize. Believe me, we got a little bit ahead last time. We went from about a C- to a C on Congress and on the House. And we could go from a C to a C+, or maybe even a B in this next election. Now what I'm doing, I'm asking that 10%, that's just 1 out of 10 of you, but now that means 9 of you can shrug your shoulders and forget it. No, don't do that. Everybody, let's see what we can do by supporting an organization that is non-compromising and is vigorous in the support of our gun rights. Mr. Forbes, for example, has been asked his position. Well, he supports the Second Amendment. That doesn't tell anybody anything. Clinton says he supports the Second Amendment.
Yeah, boy, what does that mean?
Well, it doesn't mean a thing, because it depends on how you interpret the Second Amendment, and that's the reason why I objected to a duplication of the Second Amendment in our Louisiana Constitution 25, 30 years ago.
Because it didn't go far enough.
It didn't go far enough. It left too much for interpretation, too much for somebody to fiddle with.
Right.
We made sure it was an individual right, not a collective right. I don't agree with the collective theory, and anybody that's read the Law Review article in the Michigan Law Review, 80 some odd pages with over 250 footnotes, or had read a liberal professor's article in the Yale Law Review called The Embarrassing Second Amendment, could not possibly come away from those two articles, heavily documented, with any idea other than the fact the founders intended this to be an individual right. It was not a right. It was not put there to enable the states to have militias. It was not put there for any other purpose. It was put there to stop the federal government from interfering what was a natural right of the people that they had already, that predated the Constitution, and just said the federal government don't mess with it.
Well, and that right is, of course, the right of self-defense.
Well, it's a right of self-defense,
Sure.
Defense of self, defense of family, and in urgent circumstances, defense of the republic itself. And believe me, that is important. England found that out in World War II. They had disarmed their people, and when they rescued some of their soldiers from Dunkirk, but without their equipment, they had to beg American sportsmen for arms.
They asked for anything, go bang, didn't they?
For anything that would go bang. It was one of those things Winston Churchill was reported to have said after one of his famous speeches, that we shall meet them on the beachheads, we will fight them in the streets. And after he got off the radio doing that, he made the comment, and we shall do it with clubs because that's all we have. The English darn near lost World War II before the United States got into it. And I don't want to see that situation ever develop again. And believe me, the world is not a peaceful place.
No.
There are wars going on right now. There's strife going on right now. There are nuclear weapons all over the place. All over the place. There are more diverse groups with nuclear weapons right now than there have ever been in the past.
Well, it's something I want to bring up too. A few days ago, well, a week or so ago here, we had a tornado come through Shreveport. And you know, at one point in Shreveport, for about half a day, in fact, if I recall properly, 911 didn't work. It was out. It was down. It was non-functioning. Well, if someone needed the police, it was non-existent. And then a few days ago, someone called me up, a lady I know, that moved into a small community neighboring Shreveport over here. And in her apartment complex, there was some trouble, and there was no one at all there. There was a fight going on outside, and I think somebody got stabbed over across the hallway there. Well, they wound up. She and this young girl lived there alone. And they wound up that some of these idiots who were in the scuffle were beating on their wall and carrying on, and she told me they were terrified. And she said she called the police of this local community. No answer. There was no one home at the police department. No one there. They were absolutely on their own. She called me up and says, Johnny, says, you know, she never would allow a firearm in her home. But now she asked me that, could you show me how to use one of these guns? You know, I want to get one. It's a perfect example of things can go wrong on, you know, the jungle is seething right underneath the surface in our society. If you don't,
civilization is just a veneer, believe me.
It absolutely is, and things can happen for a moment, and you know, it would have been such a tragedy for this fine lady and this young girl for something to happen. No telling what would have happened to them. The people outside just decided not to come in. It's the only reason that no one could have prevented it. There was no one there to help, and they would have had nothing at all. There's no telling what the outcome would have been good. But yet these things can happen. The police are not going to be there when you have the problem. They're not going to be on the scene.
Well, particularly in times of civil emergency, for example, floods, storms,
earthquakes,
weather emergencies such as we had, ice storms. All of our schools were closed.
That's true.
The courthouses were closed. The federal court was closed. The state courts were closed. The city court was closed. Everything was closed. And
just a couple of days ago, absolutely, yeah.
A few years ago, when we had a similar situation, the ice storms were such that about 30% of the city was without power.
Right.
Fortunately, most of them had telephones.
Well, the problem is with ice, the amounts of ice that we had on the roads here, I mean, it shut everything down here for a couple of days. The police or no one else could have gotten to you anyway. I mean, there are places in our area here that, I mean, for a day or so, we're essentially incommunicado. I mean, just we're out of touch, and it's a frightening thing for someone who is totally helpless.
Well, this same belief has been espoused before, and I'd like to read you an excerpt from the Gun Digest of probably 40 years ago.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, friends, it's so neat to be able to carry a gun or a fishing rod or about anything you want hands-free. This is such a neat invention, and of course, when you need it, there it is. This is the Tri-Tote, and these are some very fine folks. It's a very high-quality gun or rod carrier, whatever of length you might have to carry. So here's some information on it right now.
Get your hands off that gun, bow, or fishing rod. Holding onto your equipment while you're going through the woods or climbing a hill is fatiguing and possibly dangerous. The versatile Tri-Tote all-season carrier is easy to use. You never have to drill a hole in your fine gun stock. And the Tri-Tote can be set up for your specific needs in a jiffy. Just follow the illustrated instructions and free demo video enclosed. There you are, hands-free, yet ready to shoot in an instant. Hunting and fishing have never been more enjoyable. With Tri-Tote, your equipment is secure and your hands are free to support yourself or carry other gear. How did you ever get along without Tri-Tote? Make this year's hunting and fishing the best ever. To order your Tri-Tote at this special TV price, call toll-free 1-800-231-1443. That's 1-800-231-1443.
Well, I went back to my library and I picked up what I knew I had here. 1957 edition of Gun Digest. Now that is 39 years ago. I said maybe 40 years. 39 years ago. And here are some very prophetic words when the world was a little bit different, when there wasn't as much yak, yak, yak about disarming us, but there was still plenty of it. There's another reason why good citizens should be armed for protection and know how to use those weapons. The law of tooth and claw is just below the surface. A couple of atom bombs in the right or wrong places, a strong earthquake, a properly routed hurricane, or a slight touch of revolution, and you find that you live by the gun and don't live without one. And the safest and quietest communities in this country, or for that matter in the world, are those where the police have an efficient but sizable reserve of gun-trained citizens to call on in an emergency. And I love this, I've quoted it many times. If anything on earth is a double distilled essence of stupidity, it's for a free and sovereign people to permit themselves to be disarmed. No people are free if they cannot, in the last resort, make freedom stick by force if necessary.
Well, sir, that was excellent. You know, it's interesting and amazing to see how much things, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Those 30 some odd years ago, there was all sorts of talk about disarming us as citizens. And, you know, it's an ongoing battle. Freedom, like the National Guard commercial, freedom is not free. It is constant vigilance. So this is something that all of us, and this is going to be I would say this is going to be one of the more important presidential elections in the history of this country, wouldn't you say?
Presidential and Congress and Senate also. Now understand, I don't think there ought to be too much unanimity in government. Government does too much damage when everybody agrees on the same thing, because they don't always agree on what is right. It needs fierce debate, fierce opposition, and it's got to be tested in the crucible of logic and reason. I don't want a dictatorship of the Republicans any more than I don't want a dictatorship of the Democrats. I want the ideas to be presented in a public forum, and frankly, when our founders set this form of government up, they didn't intend for people to be full-time politicians and for Congress to meet 12 months of the year, or for 10 months with a couple of months vacations or something like that stuck in between. They intended for these to be citizens who, for a time, were called to go to Washington and to make laws and provide for certain things, but they did not intend for there to be a professional politician. And unfortunately, that's what we have today, professional politicians. Or if I said several times, I'd be glad to double the legislature salary if they just stay home. Just stay home and leave us alone.
Well said, sir. Well, folks, stay tuned. We've got a lot of ground to cover.
For Health Club information, give us a call, 1-800-895-7916. Leave your name, address, and phone number. Someone will get back to you as soon as possible. Friends, this is such a wonderful thing. Do it for yourselves today.
Now, friends, you know, we have all kinds of people. Our show is reaching more and more viewers all over the United States, several other countries for that matter. So anyway, we get a lot of mail, a lot of questions, and those of us who are new to shooting, some of us watching today are, have questions about why are there different barrel lengths? What difference does barrel length make on a gun? This Ruger SP-101 with about a 2 or so inch barrel is in .357 Magnum. All right, this is a Ruger GP100, also chambered in .357 Magnum. And they say, what's the difference? Why have the bigger gun if you can have the same caliber with a smaller gun? Another question here is a Super Black Hawk, in fact my old Super Black Hawk, well worn for that matter, 44 Magnum versus another Super Black Hawk, loaned to us by the good folks at Britton's incidentally. This gun has a 7.5 inch barrel, my old gun does, and this longer barrel model is essentially the same gun in stainless steel, but it has a 10.5 inch barrel. So people are saying, well, why would you need that? Okay, one, let's notice some performance characteristics, especially in the Magnum chamberings, especially the longer burn time you have with the longer barrel gives you a dramatic increase in velocity. So let's take a look here, get my earplugs in really well. Yes, always we shoot with hearing protection and with eye protection, no exceptions down here. Okay, notice how the 6-inch barrel gun, let's take a look at it in recoil. See, just not a whole heck of a lot of recoil. We're shooting full charge .357 Magnum loads. Now then, same drill with your SP-101, same caliber, same ammunition. Watch it. See, quite a bit more recoil because you don't have that extra weight. Let's see that again. All right, your 6-inch GP100. See? Again with the SP-101. See, quite a bit more recoil. More noise too, because more of the powder burns outside the barrel. Well, let's take a look here at our Super Blackhawks. Same drill. A little upchuck there. I do have these Pac-Mare grips which really do help on the Super Blackhawk. These guns have this trigger guard there that nails my finger here on the knuckle. But anyway, let's try our 10.5 inch model, see if we can see any difference. Hard to say, not a whole heck of a lot with stock grip, maybe a little bit less. Now then, as we said, with the Magnum calibers, you get an increase in velocity. Typically, on handguns or rifles, either for that matter, we look for about a 50 feet per second increase in velocity, everything else being equal. Now then, it's interesting, the Rugers typically get really good velocities out of their guns. Let's take a look. In fact, we have our chronograph down today. We have our Chroney. Someone asked us about how good the Chroney chronographs were, so let's use it and let's time these guns and let's just see how much difference, in fact, that barrel length among these guns makes. Let's start off with our SP-101 357, and yes, we're shooting Corbine ammunition. I think that certainly Corbine on a per shell basis will outperform any other manufacturer's ammunition. And that's not just because they've been a good sponsor of our program, it's because we like to use what works. But we do have several different types of ammunition, but let's go with Corbine because honestly that's what I shoot the most of. Anyway, and certainly performs the best in the guns that I have. All right, let's go ahead. We have our chronograph set up, and let's shoot the 357 Magnum out of the SP-101 2-inch barrel. Okay, 1,257 feet per second. All right, let's shoot another shell through it. Okay, 1,221 feet per second. Difference there of about 25 or so feet per second, which is not unusual between different shells, different cartridges. So let's try the same ammunition in our GP100 with a 6-inch barrel. Okay, 1,475 feet per second. Well, friends, that's quite a bit, from 1,225 to 1,250 up to 1,475. See, we're looking at about 225 or so difference feet per second.
And due to time limitations on today's show, we'll have to take that shot on the next program. Well, let's take one more look at that Browning machine gun.